Good afternoon, this is Dr. Bryson. This is another video for Unit 1 of Introduction to the Criminal Justice System. In this video, we're going to talk about measuring crime. Everything that we do, and you will learn about what we call intelligence-led policing in a later chapter, but everything that we do or should be doing in the criminal justice system is based on research. This is how we collect data. We have to measure crime. This is one of the primary ways that we collect data, or maybe I should say these are some of the primary ways. But we're going to talk about some of the major crime databases. These are databases that are available for the public to use in doing their own research. So let's get right into it. We need to talk about the dark figure of crime first, because these databases are going to be about the crime reporting that is done to the federal government. So when we talk about the dark figure of crime, we mean the crimes that never get reported. So we as researchers never know about them. There are crimes of all types that never get reported. Believe it or not, there are a lot of folks who are victims of petty larceny who likely never report that anything has ever been stolen from them. There are several folks that might have been the victim of simple assault that never report it. On the other side, when we talk about the dark figure of crime, there are more serious crimes that tend to be secretive in nature anyway. If there's a bank robbery, pretty much everybody knows there's a bank robbery. It's not very secretive. The folks doing it try to keep their identity secret, but the fact that there was a crime is not secret. However, there are two types of crimes, domestic related crimes, that tend to be highly secretive. The first are sexual offenses. Especially when the sexual offending occurs within the family, it is much less likely to be reported. The other is what we now call intimate partner violence. Intimate partner violence used to be called domestic violence, but that term is a catch-all that covers all sorts of different types of violence. If two brothers who are 20 years old, let's say twins, living in the same home, get into a fight with one another, and the police are called, they might both be charged with domestic violence under the law. So when it comes to research, we call it intimate partner violence when it has to do with one of the partners in a romantic relationship abusing the other. So we call that intimate partner violence. But those are very dark figures because there are a lot of those that go completely unreported and no one even knows that they're occurring except for the perpetrator and the victim. It's very important to understand that when we talk about the dark figure of crime. We can't collect data on what we don't know. It's very important to keep in mind. So let's delve into the various federal databases that are available to anyone in the public. The first one is the Uniform Crime Report, or the UCR. This is collected by the FBI. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has most of the police agencies in the country participating in this. There's a strong limit to the Uniform Crime Report, and that is that police agencies only report the most serious crime when they make an arrest or when they're reporting on the crime. Think about someone who is a serial killer, but they're what we call a serial sexual killer, meaning that they rape their victims before they kill them. That person committed rape and murder. In the Uniform Crime Report, only the murder gets reported because that is considered more serious than the rape. Maybe not much more serious, but still more serious. So only the murder gets reported to the Uniform Crime Report. The positive of the Uniform Crime Report, or the UCR, is that there are so many agencies that participate. There's a lot more agencies. There are a lot more agencies who are reporting to the FBI database. Well, because of the limit that I just mentioned, where only what is considered the most serious crime is reported to the FBI now has what is called the National Incident-Based Reporting System, or I affectionately call it NIBRS, because NIBRS, that's how you would say that word, NIBRS. But the National Incident-Based Reporting System, the form is much longer. There are a lot fewer agencies participating in providing data to the FBI. However, in the National Incident-Based Reporting System, the agencies that report the data to the FBI, they will include every crime committed. If they go to an intimate partner violence call, and they get there and they find that the man beat the wife, but he beat her because she found out that he was molesting the children, so he gets charged with child molestation and intimate partner violence, or the state would still call it domestic violence in the criminal code. Well, the child sexual abuse is the most serious of those crimes. Under the UCR, only the sexual abuse would be reported. Under the National Incident-Based Reporting System, both are getting reported. Additionally, under the UCR, victim data was not provided. In the National Incident-Based Reporting System, we actually have data being collected about the victims when it's available. Now, it's not always available, but when it is available, that information is collected. So now we have more data that can be analyzed and compared, so we have more data points that can be plugged into research when we need to do that. Okay, so let's go to the third one, and these are the three major ones that we're going to talk about. The third one is called the National Crime Victimization Survey, and it is a service of the Bureau of Justice Statistics, so it does not go through the FBI. But the National Crime Victimization Survey basically is a survey that cold calls citizens of the US every year. And then they'll follow up with those same individuals for so many years, and they'll ask them questions about particular, about being victimized by particular crimes. Actually, the NCVS compared to the UCR fine-tuned our understanding of the dark figure of crime, because the NCVS were showing that there were significantly more sex crimes, domestic violence crimes, things like that, than we were seeing in the UCR. Now, there are some limits to this, and one is that one of the things that the Bureau of Justice Statistics has done is they've had to change the survey over the years. That makes it more difficult to compare now to the past, because they've had to fine-tune the survey and get certain questions more defined. For instance, there were a couple of the early NCVSs that looked as though women physically abused their male partners more than men physically abused their female partners. Well, when folks went and looked at the survey and how the question was asked, it simply asked, have you ever been struck, slapped, punched? And I can't remember all the words that were used, but it didn't ask for any clarification. So if my wife and I were sitting on the couch watching a comedy and something was real funny and she slapped me on the leg, not as an abuse thing, but as a laughter move, that would not have been abuse, but that would have been reported. Things like that were getting reported. So the NCVS survey questions had to be fine-tuned, and it's much better now than it used to be. But we actually found out a lot of things. One of the issues was child molestation. It used to be believed that men were the primary child molesters. It was very rare that a woman did this. When they started asking these questions very specifically in the NCVS, they found that there were a lot more women sexually abusing children. Well, and then lo and behold, guess what? The criminal justice system started taking that more serious. So now we are seeing a lot more women detected and prosecuted for sexually abusing children. I don't think that they're doing it more. I think that we're more likely to actually find it and prosecute it now. Okay, so those are the sources of the three primary sources from the federal government on crime data. But I wanted to get back to and do this one thing, and I'm going to refer to an earlier video where I mentioned the recidivism rates of sex offenders. And I mentioned that those who go through rehabilitation, their recidivism rates are cut in half. Now, I didn't go into much detail on that because I had planned this particular slide. But we need to remember the dark figure of crime. Remember what I said earlier in this particular video about sexual offending being one of the most secretive of crimes, meaning the dark figure of sexual offending is more significant usually than most other crimes. That's true when we talk about recidivism rates. Now, sex offenders might recidivate in one of two ways. They might recidivate by committing a new sexual offense. So that's a crime-specific recidivism. Or they might recidivate by committing any criminal offense. That's what we call general criminal recidivism. Sex offenders who go through rehabilitation may commit general crimes, non-sexual offense crimes, more frequently than those who, than specific sexual offense recidivism crimes. But here's the thing. We don't know those folks who are committing new sexual offenses who've already been detected once. We don't know the ones who are committing new ones who never get reported to the system. In other words, the recidivism rates are likely higher and maybe, possibly, much higher than what we know. This is important for research and policy, because if we take the research and we say, oh, well, they're not, you know, the recidivism rates are fairly low when we know it's a very secretive crime, and we know there's a big possibility that they might be reoffending and they're not being turned in again, then if we say we've got to develop policy based on the recidivism rates being very low, we might be leaving the public at risk. That's very important to keep in mind. Very important to keep in mind. Unfortunately, now this is one of my areas of expertise, if you didn't know, sex offenders. So I will be giving probably more examples with sex offenders than other crimes, because this is one of my areas of expertise. But in the organizations to which I'm a member, there is a very strong emphasis on, but our known recidivism rates are so low. Well, but we always have to remember, but those are known recidivism rates. Sexual offending is very secretive, much more secretive than other crimes, which means our recidivism rates might be much higher. And we have to keep that in mind. So when we apply research, and I just wanted to kind of lay this out here for this particular video, when we apply research, I'm going to end this slide share now. So when we apply research, we need to always understand, sometimes we have very significant limits. The biggest limit that we have in criminal justice research is not being able to collect data on those folks that don't get caught. And that certainly applies here. We'll see you next video.